And now to discuss the significance of Africa Month in detail, we are now joined by Dr. Charles Sinkala, International Relations Consultant. Charles, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. One would ask, with all the problems that Africa is faced with, especially more recently with the issues of Sudan, when it comes to celebrating Africa Month, and when we're facing conflicts, why do we need to celebrate this month?
Bali, thank you very much for having me, and good evening to your viewers. Look, I think we'll look at it in two different perspectives. One would be the mainstream media, which has got its own narrative of how Africa is moving, whether it is moving backwards or it's moving forward. But in the other perspective would be the reality of what has Africa achieved as compared to the apartheid times, as compared to the colonial times. Is it possible that now we have more people are being employed? Is it possible that we've got the freedom now that we are African continent is moving forward? These are the questions that we have to subject ourselves. Yes, the media has indicated that there is more squatter camps and concentration camps which has been built over the years post the apartheid and colonial time. But what is the reality on the ground is that Africa has achieved something that we can celebrate on the Africa Day tonight, that at least we do not have human rights abuse as it was and as it were in the colonial and apartheid times.
And if we can also then, Charles, touch on, the more recent challenges that we have faced. And I'm so happy that you're actually highlighting, the gains made on the African continent, especially pertaining to the independence. But at the same time, one cannot help but also look at the problems facing Sudan and the current war there. If you can just give us a bit of your insight and your take on what is currently taking place in Sudan.
Bali, yes, we cannot ignore, the bad things that are happening in the African continent. And I think what we have achieved so far is to nurture and nourish and protect our security and territorial integrity within our continent. So what is happening now in Sudan is unprecedented in the history of our independence that we shall foresee. Things such as that, African people being killed or fleeing from their own countries where they were supposed to have the freedom that we fought for and our forefathers they fought for. But for every conflict, I've always spoken that there's the third law of conflict, that among those two people who are fighting, the two generals who are fighting Sudan, there's a third party involved. And these wars are proxy wars. I've mentioned that these proxy wars are fought between the United States of America and Russia, who are present there supporting either side of whom they want to be in power. And I think as Africans, we must look inward, in order for us to build what we have achieved to avoid such influence from the outside.
Another issue I'd want to touch on, Dr. Charles, is of course something that as South Africa we recently dealt with, and of course it was those foreign nationals who were camping outside of the UN offices in Pretoria and then had to be, removed through a court order. Surely, as a number of countries still battle war and problems of that nature, what needs to be done, to properly accommodate those African nationals who have actually fled because they fear for their lives?
Bali, yes, that is also of something to note. I think what we need to do is some countries, yes, on the continent are doing very well, not very bad as compared to Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, we've talked about Central African Republic, Cameroon and others. I appeal to the leaders who are in power and those who are presiding over those countries that are doing at least better, to be able to be going to the table to support and assist those countries who are trying to grapple, to come up in terms of managing their own citizens. And I think if we understand the impact of migration You know, we wouldn't be sorting out such things such as that. What is happening now, as those people have mentioned, they are fleeing from their own country, countries which they thought that they have regained their independence, that they shall have peace and harmony for their family and for themselves and generations to come, but only to flee from those countries that ended up by the United Nations offices there in Pretoria. But, you know, the United Nations has been complicit to the problems that we have. Those that won't help us. And I think presidents and leaders who are in charge of those citizens, they must be called, you know, and summoned by either South Africa or Foreign Affairs, DECO, and to ask them certain difficult questions. Why you as a country who has claimed to have regained independence from the colonial rule, you still have your children who are coming here? How can we find an amicable solution to make sure that you give them a chance as well to celebrate or to enjoy the fruits and benefits of the post-independence?
And Dr. Charles, coming to another issue as well that continues to plague the African continent is the issue of elections. And quite often when some African countries go to elections, they find themselves in conflict. And, you know, one would say that even with the Sudan matter, we know that they are also due for an election, and hence why we are also then seeing this war taking place in that country. Why do you think that we continue to see this tussle for power, especially leading up to elections in various countries, and of course leading to such problems of war?
I think to the larger extent, you know, it's a lack of unity and lack of recognizing the Pan-Africanism that democracy and leadership is a real race, you know. For those who've served before us and those who are going to serve after us, how can we sit down and resolve ourselves? Elections is actually a competition of ideas. Those who have better ideas, they should lead the nations. You know, Africa on the overall, if you are to look at it, Zambia exchanged a very good power transition, you know, in 2021 when the new president, HH, was elected. South Africa, as well as going through the electoral processes, it cannot be 100% good and free, but we can see the transition. And recently we had Nigeria, which went to the polls. Yes, not everybody would like the candidate, but others, yes, they have voted. There is that sense of people participating in the electoral vote, and Zimbabwe now is going to be going to the elections. But the countries such as Sudan, you know, to God save the people of that Sudan and the leaders who are there, they have been influenced by something else, that they have militarized their nation, which stops the electoral civilian votes or a citizen's rights to vote, to cast their votes. In fact, those regions have been under martial law and they have suspended most of the rights of the people. We hope that those who are going to mediate those conflicts there, they must not recognize the rebel leaders who are coming to just to devour and create confusion for their interests. The United Nations, the regional blocs, and as well as the AU should not recognize the rebel leaders.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles. Of course, that is Dr. Charles Sinkala, an international relations consultant, just giving us, his take on Africa Month. Of course, we do know that Africa Day will be celebrated on the 25th of May.